I'm Mark Golub, and as election 2016 rolls on, for all the talk and attention being paid to Donald Trump, there seems to be much more drama in the Democratic primaries than people had expected. The popular wisdom was that Hillary Clinton would cruise to the nomination and that a 70-year-old Jewish senator from Vermont had absolutely no chance of making any dent in Democrat support of Mrs. Clinton. In fact, at one time, not too long ago, almost anyone you spoke with would say with a degree of certainty, well, Hillary will be our next president and our first woman president. It was almost as if a general election weren't even necessary. But Bernie Sanders has been the second biggest surprise of this primary season. So while Hillary has won 26 primaries, Bernie has won 20, including a huge upset in West Virginia. And if one sets superdelegates aside, in pledged delegates, Bernie Sanders now trails Hillary by fewer than 300 delegates. Only 283 pledged delegates separate Hillary and Bernie now constantly reminds his audience that Mrs. Clinton began the primary race with more than 400 superdelegates before a Democratic primary vote was ever cast. And of course, superdelegates have the right to change their minds. And Bernie is hoping that if he keeps winning primaries, he may convince superdelegates to do just that. Of course, much of the enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders is coming from young people, the same group which elected Barack Obama in 2008. And political pros are asking, why hasn't Hillary won young people? And why aren't young women coming out in support of Hillary Clinton? And what can she do about her unfavorables, which the only good thing about them is that Donald Trump's unfavorables are even worse. It's been one amazing primary season. Hasn't it been that? And what about Jewish Democrats? Where do they fall in this primary season? Well, for some answers, I'm so pleased to be joined once again on our phones from Washington, D.C. by the co-founder and chair of the Women's Leadership Network of the NJDC, the National Jewish Democratic Council, Barbara Goldman Goldberg. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us once again.
It's my pleasure, Mark. I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you, dear. By the way, Barbara, how did you get involved in politics, and how did you end up, being one of the founders of the Women's Leadership Network of the NJDC?
Well, I started my political career when I was very young. I worked on Capitol Hill, and I worked as speechwriter and special assistant to Barbara C. Jordan of Houston, Texas. And that's where I cut my political teeth, and went on from BJ's office over to the National League of Cities and the Conference of Mayors, where I represented a few cities as their Washington, D.C. rep,
wow,
where I oversaw legislative and programmatic issues.
That's very impressive. Do you have a family, Barbara?
Do I have family? I most certainly do. I have 3 daughters, a
Mazel
husband,
yeah,
a mom, and a sister.
Very nice.
And a son-in-law.
Very.
Can't forget my son-in-law.
No. What's your husband's name?
My husband's name is Michael.
Does Michael share your political views?
Yes, he does.
So you share this and you're in this together?
My husband shares my political views. 2 of my daughters do, and one must remain neutral because she is with the media.
Okay, I understand. By the way, while we're talking to Barbara, and this airs, it'll be airing Tuesday night, the night of the Kentucky primary, where there are 55 delegates up in the Democratic Party, and then also it's the Oregon primary by mail-in ballot, where 61 delegates are up for grabs. You heard the open, Barbara. Why do you think it is that Hillary has had such a difficult time, and what did you expect personally? Were you among those who thought she would basically have an easy time?
Well, I think that it's presumptuous to assume that any candidate will have an easy time sailing in, so to speak. So I'm not sure that I really thought it would be a slam dunk situation. I'm not surprised. I think that any time someone presents themselves as a leader, promising wonderful things for everybody, it definitely generates support and it generates another level of hope. Mm-hmm. I think that that in this particular race, it's a clear choice, but I certainly don't take anything for granted, nor do I think either of the candidates do.
Okay. You're a real pro here, Barbara. For me, and I'm just a layperson looking at this from the outside, I have been flabbergasted. I really thought that Hillary represented what the Democratic Party has been moving to. I wouldn't have been surprised if she'd won 8 years ago, and I expected her to have a very easy time, and I thought that Bernie Sanders, who seems to be I guess a lovely guy, I've never met him. All I can see, all I do is get a sense from the podium of who he is, and I've seen him in one-on-one interviews, but he seems to be radical. He self-defines as a socialist. So for me, I've been flabbergasted. I thought this was Hillary's year, and it's interesting for me to hear a pro like yourself say, no, you didn't take it for granted because you proved to be right.
Well, thank you. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. I do think that reality has to set in at some point as we move forward. We see a very fractured Republican Party right now, and lots of attention has been paid to the fractures, and I feel that oftentimes people are looking for another story on the other side of the aisle. Mm-hmm. Let's look at this from a few steps back, let's say. You've got two candidates, both of whom have served in the Senate. Clearly, one serving many, many, many more years than the other, but the other has served in a multitude of capacities that would make a voter feel that there's a great deal of experience under the belt.
Yes.
When you look at experience in the Senate on both sides, you want to see results. You want to see what happened during that tenure. Truth be known, in full disclosure, I supported Barack Obama in the Democratic primary in 2008, and then again in 2012, and I served as co-chair of Obama for America's Jewish Community Leadership Council in both elections. And I'm looking now at everything that's happened in the last 2 terms. And by the way, full disclosure again, disclaimer, I am speaking now on behalf of myself because NJDC embraces all views in the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And the Women's Leadership Network is of no exception, and so I'm quite sure that we have members who may not agree with me.
Sure.
So make that clear.
Yes.
I'm speaking for myself.
Thank you for saying that.
I think from my perspective, it's Hillary's time.
Right.
She has proven her leadership capabilities. She has proven her expertise in foreign affairs. I don't think Israel has a better friend in this race, albeit The Middle East is not the only area of the world with which we are concerned and with which we can only or should only be concerned. I think that Hillary's perspectives across the board are unparalleled in this election on both sides of the aisle, by the way. What I do think is that Bernie Sanders has elevated the dialogue. He has brought to the attention many issues that are near and dear to all of our hearts. And I'm happy for that. I think there needs to be differing opinions. There needs to be debate and discussion and listening and learning on each side of the candidate's staff as well as their supporters. Mm-hmm. But at some point, reality must set in. We need to beat the Republican candidate, which, by the way, has surprised me. Mm-hmm. Because 6 months ago, I would have told you that Trump doesn't stand a chance, that the American public is too smart.
Right.
So I am surprised by that. But I do think that it now is a very serious issue. I believe that Hillary is the only candidate who can beat them. And I also believe that Hillary is the next president, number 45, of the United States of America.
Mm-hmm. What do you hear, Jews that you speak with in your community, and again, because you're involved with the Jewish Coalition, the Democratic Jewish Council, what do you hear Jews say? Do you hear them say, and I have to tell you, I meet Jews all the time, Barbara, who tell me either, oh, I'm voting for Bernie Sanders. And, I live in Connecticut, and I have Jews coming up to me and saying before the Connecticut primary, I'm voting for Bernie. By the way, I don't think he can win. I don't think he has a chance, but I'm going to vote for Bernie. And I also spoke recently in New York at a gathering of a large Jewish gathering, and I spoke to Jews there, and they said to me, no, we're voting for Hillary Clinton. So I am hearing from Jews both support for both of these candidates. What are you hearing?
So most of the primaries are behind us, and as you point out, if you discount the superdelegates, Hillary has over 300 more delegates than Bernie Sanders has.
Yes.
So I think one who examines the situation closely needs to realize that there's no way numerically that Bernie Sanders is going to win. Hillary Clinton will be the Democratic nominee. There are many times that I will hear people say, oh, no, I'm supporting Bernie. Well, it's too late. Mm-hmm. It's too late to say that because he's not going to be, at least for now, and unless there was some catastrophic event that prevented Hillary from taking the nomination, from gaining the nomination, that Bernie is going to give people an option that he hasn't already provided. Mm-hmm. Once again, I think that you need to sit back and examine what are the realistic options. And there really is only one right now. By the same token, I embrace and welcome the dialogue that Bernie has created. He raises good issues. He's enriched the dialogue. And he also has energized a base that perhaps would not have been as energized had he not entered the race. But really and truly, and again, make no mistake about it, I don't have a crystal ball. I've been lucky that I've predicted the last few elections, both locally as well as nationally. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think that the Jewish community will rally around Hillary. This is what I'm hearing. And they will support, the community will support her because she has proven that she is a strong supporter of Israel as well as the other issues that reflect Jewish core values.
I think you say it very well, and I am not in any way indicating a preference from the chair I sit in here on JBS, not for Republican, not for Democrat, not for a specific Republican, not for a specific Democrat. What I've tried to do here on JBS, Barbara, is simply give people like yourself the opportunity to present the issues as they see them, and this is important to me. I've tried to keep it above the fray. I don't care whether we're talking about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, or whether at one point we were talking about Ted Cruz or we're talking about Bernie Sanders. I don't want to hear nonsense. I want to hear what are the issues which drive people's concerns. And I also host a program on a Russian television network, primarily for Russian-speaking Jews. And I host a political show once a week on that network. And what I've said continually is, and this has nothing to do with how I'm going to vote. I believe that what you say is factually true. I will now be shocked even more than I am that Trump Trump is the presumptive Republican nominee. I would be flabbergasted even more so if Bernie Sanders were to take the nomination away from Hillary Clinton, who, as you say, it seems to me all of history is saying this is her time, and the numbers seem to say, without question, this is her time. So I appreciate the way you say it. I do want to hear what you say about, if you turn on any television show, any radio show, what you're hearing talked about is Donald Trump's unfavorables and Hillary Clinton's unfavorables. And Donald Trump has these staggering unfavorables of 57%, but Hillary has unfavorables of 52%. What do you hear in the Jewish community? And what I hear is the following. There's no way I'm going to vote for Trump, and therefore, even though there are things about Hillary Clinton that upset me, I am going to vote for Hillary Clinton in the election, and I'm hearing that even from people who voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary. Whatever they vote for, whatever they did in the primary, they're already telling me when it comes to the general election, it's going to be Hillary Clinton. Now, that's what I hear. I ask you again, what do you hear?
So, it's almost like living in a bubble when you live in Washington.
Yes.
I'm fortunate that part of NJDC's work is across the country, and so I hear a little bit more coming out of communities where there are large concentrations of members of the Jewish community, certainly in Florida, in Ohio, Pennsylvania, states that I believe where the Jewish communities will rally around Hillary Clinton, because I am hearing, while we're not 100% satisfied with her on any given point, they know that when it comes to getting something accomplished, Hillary has a far better chance of achieving those goals than does Sanders. The truth of the matter is that Bernie's been in the Senate for a very long time. He has yet to put a coalition together of anybody for any piece of legislation. I believe from the bottom of my heart that he is sincere and committed and believes in every single thing that he is saying. I respect it and I like it, but that's not enough. And what I'm hearing from members of the Jewish community and from leaders in the community, as well as an average citizen of the United States who happens to be a member of the Jewish community, that when you want something accomplished, it's Hillary Clinton who's going to do it. She's going to build coalitions. She's going to reach across the aisle. She is going to get it done. And I believe that.
I understand.
So while I may tend to be around people that share my own feelings and thoughts, I do have an opportunity to hear what a lot of other people are saying. And truthfully, I believe when it comes to issues like Social Security, quality education, equal pay, climate change, gun safety, on all those issues that are near and dear to every American's heart, but also resonate very strongly with members of the Jewish community, it's Hillary Clinton who's going to be able to address those issues and reach across the aisle to make something happen.
Again, you say it very well. And all I want to do is give you an opportunity to sort of address the sticky problems which now the Democratic Party in general and Hillary Clinton in particular face. Look, the reality is, and you know this even better than I, Barbara, a good 70% of the Jewish community has traditionally voted Democrat. They're going to vote Democrat again. At the same time, there are Jews who are passionate about the state of Israel, who have been uncomfortable with some of the diplomatic decisions that Barack Obama has made vis-a-vis Israel, Netanyahu, etc. And they feel that Hillary Clinton is going to simply continue the Obama perspective on the Middle East. As far as you know, is that the case? If Hillary Clinton is elected, can the Jewish community assume that she will bring to the Middle East the same perspective that Barack Obama had?
Well, Mark, I'm glad that you brought this up, because I think depending upon where and with whom you discuss Barack Obama's diplomatic relations with the Middle East is how you form an opinion and how it's presented. And I really do believe that he has, in many circles, not all, been given a fair shake. And I think that the burden of diplomatic relations rests on both sides. And having lived in Washington and working with the White House, as you know, and we've talked about this earlier on other shows, I don't agree that that there is a real problem in the way Barack Obama, as president, has handled his relationship with other nations and the Middle East. We are the most respected nation in the world, and we continue to be. And under Barack Obama's presidency, it has improved dramatically. I think that the burden rests on both sides of how a relationship is formed. And without getting into criticism of the other side, because I will tell you that many of my Israeli friends in and out of government agree with me that it's perception. And it's perception that's defined in a multitude of ways through a multitude of outlets, whether it's in an Israeli newspaper that's funded by an American Republican, or whether it's done by a left-of-center Israeli paper, or a middle-of-the-road Israeli paper, or an American left-of-center, an American center, an American far-right media outlet. So when you ask me, is Hillary Clinton going to continue the same policies, everybody brings a different perspective and different goals and objectives to the Oval Office. I believe in my heart that she supports President Obama's policies. She, after all, was his Secretary of State. But she's her own person. And I would not second guess her in how she is going to direct her staff, how she is going to garner favor with and establish new relationships with leaders of other nations, and that includes the state of Israel.
Well, again, you say it so well, and I am so impressed. I was impressed with you the first time we spoke, and I'm impressed with you now. No, you are lovely. Look, I understand, and the audience understands. You're a profoundly committed individual who is committed both to the Democratic view of politics, and you're also committed to Hillary Clinton. And we understand that, and I've had people on who are committed to Donald Trump, and I've had people committed to other candidates. And at the same time, what I'm interested in, regardless of whether you're committed or to whomever you're committed to, I want to hear you really address some of the issues. And you've done that for me in a very respectful and lovely way. And I think you are right. I expect Hillary Clinton to win the nomination. And if that happens, in fact, you and I will speak again. And then we'll talk about how do you think she will fare if, in fact, she goes up against Donald Trump. And what you said at the outset of this discussion, anytime you have an election, it is folly to think that either candidate in any situation can waltz into the job, waltz into a victory. And there will be issues raised, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss them together, Barbara. But I thank you so much for making time for us and being part of JBS. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, Mark. It is really always a pleasure, and I want to tell you that you articulated exactly why I enjoy being on your show, because you are impartial, and you are fair, and you are balanced. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much for saying it. You be well. We'll speak soon. The thoughts of Barbara Goldberg Goldman, co-founder and chair of the Women's Leadership Network of the NJDC, the National Jewish Democratic Council. And you heard her say that as far as reality is concerned, from her perspective, the reality is that Bernie Sanders is not able to garner enough, certainly pledged delegates, and certainly not super delegates to win the nomination from Hillary Clinton. And she expects it ultimately to be Hillary Clinton facing off against Donald Trump. When that happens, we'll have her back. I'd love to hear her, speak to why she thinks Hillary will beat Donald. Although, again, popular wisdom right now on the street is mixed. I hear very often from people who say, if it's Hillary against Donald, he has no chance in the world. And I was with a cab driver today. I said to the cab driver, so who are you voting? Actually, he said to me, who am I voting for? I said, who are you going to vote for? Donald Trump. He's a Jewish cab driver. And he was quoted, by the way, in Peggy Noonan's column on Sunday in the New York Post. Anyway, he's all for Donald Trump. And I said to him, can Donald Trump defeat Hillary Clinton? Oh, you bet he can. He can. You bet he can. So there's no foregone conclusions here. And it makes it fun for us here at JBS. But what we'll try to do is continue to highlight the Jewish perspective, the Jewish issues, obviously the state of Israel, but also Jewish social issues and social concerns, and who's going to be the next Supreme Court nominee, and whom do you want to be nominating the next Supreme Court justice, and how will the Supreme Court be shaped by the next president? And it's not easy, and it's much more complicated than people make it out to be. It is not simple at all. And we'll stay on the issue here on JBS. As always, my thanks to Director Sloan Copeland, Production Coordinator Serge Goldberg, to the JBS's Associate Director Dara Golub, and to the producer of Election 2016, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.